GJ Math.
Now we're finally getting into the grade 12 finance. The new thing you are learning is called annuities. So remember, the difference between grade 11 and 12 finance is that in grade 12, there's a repeated amount. So the X you see in that formula is the repeated amount. That means it's the same amount at the same interval of time that is deposited or repaid at the same interval every time. That's how I know it's a grade 12 formula. So the first one we're going to look at is the future value formula. There it is in the top left. So it looks quite big and intimidating, but remember, you get this on your formula sheet. So just know how to use it. You don't need to memorize it, but if you do, it's always a bonus. So the FV stands for the future value, and that is the total amount. This formula, I'm always working with savings or any investment where the money is growing. And FV stands for the total amount after the time has elapsed. The X is the repeated amount, so that always stays the same. I is normal, as you did in grade 9 to 12, but remember to divide the I by monthly, quarterly, or whatever the sum tells you. N is still the time, so once again, remember to multiply by a 12 or a 4 or whatever the sum tells you. How do I know I need to use the future value formula? So it's always connected to savings. And remember, if I'm saving for a pension fund, it's also called the saving. At the end of this chapter, you're going to learn about sinking funds. That's also future value. But I want you to really understand this at a deeper level. So I use future value whenever the money grows. Every time there's an X or a month has gone by and I put in an X into the account, the money is getting more and more. So please study this little green block on the left. You can write this in your textbooks because that's how you would know when you study for financial maths. Let's look at a few questions. The first question, Lebu decides to save 500 Rand each month. There we go. Each month, it's 500 Rand and she saves it. That's how I know it's future value. The next one, what amount must John invest each quarter? So that's why it's future value, because he's investing, his money is going to grow with each quarter. Okay, let's do these two sums, and then there's a bonus difficult question at the end. Labour decides to save 500 Rand each month. She makes the first deposit at the end of the month and the last deposit at the end of 3 years. Interest is calculated at 6% per annum compounded monthly. How much is in her account at the end of 3 years? Okay, first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to write down the formula. So remember, you can immediately sub into the formula. You don't get a mark for just writing down the base formula because it's on your formula sheet. So I'm just going to jot it down so I can show you where we're going to sub in. But I really want to urge you to make your little list. Okay, future value is what I want to work out. X, they tell me, is 500 Rand. I is going to be 6% compounded monthly, so 0.06 over 12. And N is going to be 3 years, but I need to multiply by 12. So that gives me 36. Now I can just fill it in. I can just type that into the calculator and get my answer. So there's no marks for working out pieces of this formula. A question like this would typically count 3 or 4 marks. You would get marks for, let me show you, you would get marks for choosing the right formula, for getting the right N, and then for doing your I's correctly. Don't feel bad and try to do steps in the middle. Normally people make mistakes when they do that. So the next thing I'm going to write in my exam is just the answer, which is going to be 19668.05. This is fine, and so I can just put a Rand in front. So to answer the question, how much is in her account after 3 years? Almost 20,000. Question 2, what amount must John invest each quarter to save up 100,000 Rand in 5 years if the interest is set at 5.5% compounded quarterly and he starts saving immediately? First thing, got to write down the formula. I know it's future value. Now I'm going to make my list. So in this case, they're telling me he wants to save up 100,000 Rand. I don't know what X is. I know I is going to be 0.055 over 4 because it's quarterly. And N, they tell me he wants to save this in 5 years. So because it's quarterly, I'm going to do, this is 20. But now, please watch out, big red lights. If you see the word immediately in a future value sum, okay, so he starts saving immediately. With the previous question, the person started saving at the end of the month. Now, that is considered as normal in the financial world. When you go to the bank and you tell them, I want to save, they're going to say, okay, we are going to take the first debit order or the first payment at the end of the month. Then I don't do anything with N. But because this person wanted to save immediately, they made an extra payment right at the beginning. Okay, so that sounds very complicated. The only thing you need to know is if you see the word immediately, please plus 1 to your N value. So N is actually 21 in this case. Whenever you see he started immediately, you plus the 1. Okay, let's fill in. So 100,000 is equal to, I don't know what x is, 1 plus 0.055 over 4 to the power 21 we worked out, and all of that is still over I. There we go. So now I need to work out what is x. So you don't need to do all the steps in between. The only thing you need to write for your teacher is going to be x is equal to 100,000 divided by that entire fraction, okay, without the x. So if I just type in that massive calculation into the calculator, it would tell me his x needs to be 4139.88 rands per quarter. There we go. That's how you would answer a sum like this. So once again, I don't need to show all the little calculations on the right. I can just show the teacher that I'm taking the 100,000 divided by the entire fraction. If you look at memos, that's exactly how they would do it as well. Question 3, the big one. So this is more a exam type question, but let's give it a go, and hopefully it would make a lot of sense. Nikki wants to save up money for a new car. She invests 1,600 Rand and continues to do so at the end of each month for 6 years. Okay, so there you need to see invests 1,600 and continues each month. That means it's future value. The interest is 6.5% per annum compounded monthly. Okay, so I'm just going to do a normal future value sum for that part of the question. Then she leaves the money in the account for another 2 years without making any extra payments. But the interest rate increased by 1%, and then it didn't change again. So the interest rate for the second part of this question is 7.5%. Calculate the total amount in Nikki's bank account at the end of 8 years. So very important that you see this question has two parts. The future value part, and then the part after 6 years until 8 years has passed. So let's do this step by step. I know the first part is future value. So I'm going to make a little list to see what's happening there. So the future value is what I need to work out. I don't know what it is. I know X is 1,600 Rand. I know what I is. It's the 0.065 over 12. And then N has a little catch. So they tell me it's 6 years, so definitely 6 times 12. I know that's 72. But in this story, you need to read the words very carefully. They say she invests 1,600 Rand and then continues to do so at the end of each month. So if you look at my little timeline, normally investment starts at term 1. Like I said earlier, in the end of the month is when it normally starts. That's what the bank wants from you. But Nikki was smart and she said, no, take my money now. The day she went into the bank to start the savings account, she gave them 1,600 Rand. So that is the same as them saying immediately. And remember I said when you see the word immediately, or this case, you need to plus 1 to this specific question's N value. Now we can work out the future value. So I'm just going to sub in and see what they tell me. And if I type that into the calculator, it will tell me the answer is 142,794.55267 ... Okay, so remember, this was not the final question, so I can't round off there. I need to keep that value and do the next calculation with that value in mind. So let's move over to the second part. So on my timeline, I am now at this space there. And this 142,000 is what's in the bank account at the end of 6 years. So now she's not taking the money to buy the car. She doesn't have enough. So she's going to leave the money in the bank account for another 2 years. And please, if you see a question like this and the recurring payments has stopped, it means there's no more X value. So now I need to switch over to the normal compound formula, which does not have an X. Okay, so that's where they try and trick you guys in exams. So in this case, I know my P value is the final value or the future value of the previous part. And I just need to work out what is A after 2 years. So if I sub it into the formula, it's going to look like this. There we go. So if I just type that in the calculator, my final answer to this question will be, okay guys, so a question like this would easily count 5 or 6 marks because there were so many steps. This is considered a level 3 and a level 4 question because you needed to think further than just using one formula and get the answer. So just to recap, she started investing immediately because she went to the bank and said, I want to give you the money now. I don't want to wait to the end of the month. That's why we had to plus 1 and get 73 payments in the first part of the question. Then she stopped paying at T72 after 6 years, but left the money in the bank. That's why I need to go over to the compound formula in this question. Okay, good luck with the finance chapter. Just stick with it. Watch the videos, do it over and over. I'll do many practice videos and show you the worst questions that I can find because I want you to get these marks in the exam.
If this video helped you, please like and subscribe.
JJ Math.